So welcome everyone. Good afternoon, and we are glad you are joining us here at today's webinar from Alzheimer's San Diego after the move to memory care. And so I am very pleased today to be co-presenting with my colleague and our president and CEO of Alzheimer's San Diego, Eugenia Welch.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's so nice to be here, and I hope we will have a great hour and a half together.
And I think we will. And what I want to let all of you folks know is under Eugenia's vast umbrella of expertise and experience includes a fair amount of her time in her career as an administrator of a memory care community. So she's going to bring to us a lot of insider knowledge, the perspective of the community, and with all sorts of tips and ideas and thoughts on how to make this, you've made this move to memory care, how to make this after the move part work well. So we appreciate all that you can bring to this topic and this very important topic, Eugenia. I want to let you all know, I suspect most of you may be familiar with me in one form or another. I'm a senior dementia educator here at Alzheimer's San Diego. And with us also today, we have our colleague, Amy Abrams. Can you join us?
Good afternoon, everyone.
There she is. And Amy is our Director of Education at Alzheimer's San Diego. So another well-experienced person on our staff who is able to provide lots of insight and important information to all of us as well too. Amy's going to be our clinical services support today. So we've got a real gathering of experts here that we can get. If one of us doesn't know the answer to the question, I'm thinking between the three of us that we can figure it out. And if not, we've got a whole team of other experts and professionals at Alzheimer's San Diego. So thanks for joining us, Amy. We've got a lot to cover here, and so we want to delve right into it. And Eugenia, feel free to join me here at this section just to add your 2 cents worth, as it were, that we want to acknowledge that, you know, things are opening up here with the pandemic, with adjustments and changes to rules and regulations. But I think we all understand that kind of the rules and regulations are not applicable across the board. There's different kind of rules and regulations for different businesses and organizations, and that includes memory care. So would you agree with that, Eugenia?
Absolutely. We are seeing across the county and across the state that things are opening up, but healthcare, hospitals are always going to have a stricter safety protocol in place. So always defer to the community and ask them what their protocols are at the time. If you're not sure and you're traveling from a distance, it might be good to give a call before you're going over to visit. But please always defer to the community, as they have to follow the guidelines set out by their licensing organization, their licensing body.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So, you know, we're still in I'm making motions like this with my hand because it's up and down, and we kind of just don't know, depending on where it is we're going or what we're planning to do, as to what the rules will be. So keep that in mind with memory care communities as well. What we'll be talking about through today is all sorts of tips and recommendations and considerations for you that will include how to make this transition into a community, into residential care, as smooth as possible for everyone. There's going to be bumps on the road, and we need to just acknowledge that right up front. And in fact, say to everybody, we need to plan for those bumps and expect them. It's not going to go perfectly. However, there's lots of things that we can do as people who care for somebody living with memory loss, and as consumers and people that are using the resources of the community. And so we'll be talking about how to work with the community, with their staff and their administration. We'll be talking about adjusting to new relationships. And of course, yes, that means the community, but it also means some of the shifts in relationships with the person living with dementia, as well as the new relationships of the other families and the other people that are living in memory care, and the families you'll be running into and interacting with. We'll talk about how to plan successful visits, and this absolutely is a thing. You can plan your visits, and planning them oftentimes can make them more successful, more positive, more productive than versus just going in and having a visit and having it kind of go sideways, because maybe the person living with dementia starts talking about, when are you taking me home? And so you get caught up in this conversation that's difficult and challenging. We're going to be talking about adapting to future changes. That means for you, that means for your person living with dementia, and it means for potentially family and friends as well too. And in all of this, we'll also be talking about caring for yourself through this important transition, life transition. So with that, I'm going to get us started here on our first agenda item, which is tips for making a smooth transition into residential care. And I want to let you all know, I mentioned Eugenia's experience and time in her career as an administrator, but just to let all of you know, I worked in memory care myself for 10 plus years in recreation therapy activities, as it is also known. And so I worked specifically with the people living with dementia, as well as their families, very closely with the families as well too. And obviously I was a staff member, so I worked closely with the staff. So I bring some of that perspective as well too. And much of what I'll be speaking to you about is things that I myself witnessed. And so I just want you to kind of weigh that out in terms of some of the things that we talk about. So when we're talking about making the smooth transition, there's all sorts of different things that go into this transition from quite a bit of time before the move. And we had last week, we had the part one of this series of making the move that is called Planning the Move to Memory Care. And that webinar happened last week. It is now posted in our webinar library. And in that webinar, some detailed information was provided regarding the assessment and the background questionnaire that is done, the accommodations that are in the community, and making your decision as to what accommodations will best suit your person living with dementia, and kind of the timing of the move too. And all of these things are important. Much of them are completed prior to the move-in day. And some of them are done by the community itself, and some of them are done by family members. For example, the assessment is done by the community and the physician, actually, of the person that is moving into memory care. Background information is on you as the care partner, as family members. Accommodations, that's a matter of working together with the community based on what families are looking for and what their budget is dictating as to what the community has available at this time as well too. So we'll focus a little bit more on kind of the timing of the move and talking with the person with dementia about the move. And so timing is really important. And what I'm talking about is very specifically the day of the move, the time of the day of the move, and what that is going to look like. And so here are some important points to think about with regards to the timing of the move. Is first of all, to work with the facility staff, the community staff, to coordinate the move-in and how it's going to unfold, and to coordinate it not only in terms of the time of day that's best for your person, which might be mid-morning or maybe early afternoon. You also want to be taking into consideration their level, the person living with dementia, their level of insight and capacity to understand what is going on. And as far as that goes, then you want to be also keeping, if there's questions about why this is going on, this move is happening, to keep the reason for the move quite simple and straightforward. And honestly, we absolutely encourage people, as you are comfortable with it, to use what we call the therapeutic fib. And we can, if you have questions about the therapeutic fib and just feel like there's some challenges in using that, in telling untruths to your person living with dementia, you can talk with us, with any of the clinical care coaches at Alzheimer's San Diego, so we can kind of talk through the pros and cons of that. But let me tell you this, that our position is by far that we think oftentimes kindness is more important than honesty. And so in this case, talking about the reason for the move, an example of a therapeutic fib might be that the house is being tented. And of course, we can't stay in the house when it's tented. So we're here at this particular community for a few days while that is being done. Or maybe there's a remodel going on, or something else is going on that we need to leave the house for several days and stay in this other place. So think about that. What might be a therapeutic fib that you could use? Now, the thing about the therapeutic fib is it's only as good as as long as everybody's on board with it. So if there's other family members involved in visiting and the care for the person with dementia, everybody needs to be on the same page with that. The therapeutic fib is not going to work if you have people telling different stories and different reasons as to why this move is taking place. And absolutely, the facility needs to be included in that conversation. So the community staff are also saying the same thing and are also on the same page as to what is the reason why this person with dementia can't go home right now. So you want everybody on board and agreeing that this is the response we have to those questions. The other part of this, in having conversations with the person with dementia about the move, is to, absolutely validate and give them the answer that everybody has agreed upon. Validate their feelings that yes, you want to go home. Home is a good place, and there's lots of happy memories there. And then give the reason, and we can't be there right now because the house is being tented. And then add the third part of that conversation, that interaction, which is to redirect. So redirect to what? Well, this is where, again, you can use the strengths and the resources of the community. So potentially, let's go talk to caregiver Emma about getting a cup of coffee and a snack, or let's head down to the dining room to see what's going on down there. I thought I heard some music there. So think about the redirect part of that as well, too. On move-in day, then, here's some more important things to keep in mind and really remind yourself of throughout as much as possible. And that is to prepare yourself and understand that you will have mixed feelings about this move, and that's absolutely normal. And if you're having hesitations and doubts, remind yourself of all the good that is in this move. It's very difficult to be a care partner to somebody living with dementia 24/7 on your own. To say it's difficult is not even the full of it. You can't do it alone, people. We know this at Alzheimer's San Diego. You cannot do this alone. And so for many families, there comes some point in the progression of the disease that it's just time. It's time. You raise your hand and you say, look, I can't do this on my own anymore. And for many families, the best option is to look at memory care. And there is lots of good in going to memory care. I would just suggest not to second guess yourself at this point in the process of the move-in day. Is trust in your own judgment. You've done your work. You've visited communities, you've looked at websites, you've asked the questions, you've made this decision. Trust in your judgment and the good work that you've already put into this. And then further, remember that you're not going to stop being the care partner to the person living with dementia. You will still continue in that role, but it's going to be a shared role now because you're adding this team of skilled dementia care providers to your support system and to their support system, the person living with dementia. You do need to prepare yourself as well for this day in order to try and keep emotions under check and try to present as calm and as collected and as positive as possible. This is hard. This is very hard. Best. You've already had some times, I'm sure, where a wave of emotion has overcome you in a moment where you've had to rein it in. Tap into that strength that you have, that resilience that you have. Why? Because we want to put as positive a face on this as possible for the people living with dementia. They are so good at reading our emotions and reading our nonverbals. And maybe you've seen this already, where they have a sense that something is wrong or we're upset. We're all actually pretty good at this. We are looking and observing facial expressions, eye contact, are the tears in the eyes, what's going on? And so in as much as possible, try to just put a really good and positive face on things. This is not to say don't experience your emotions. Absolutely. Keep it in check as much as you can, but give yourself an outlet for later. Maybe when you leave, maybe you can have, I'm thinking about a specific person that Amy and I worked with a few years ago, pre-pandemic. And on the day of the move-in that she took her husband to the memory care community, when she got him settled in there and the community staff took over, when she left, she had several members of the caregiver support group that she had been participating in waiting for her. And they just gave her lots of love, lots of validation about the decision she just made. And then they took her out for lunch and continued some of that love. So that's a good way to allow that emotional outlet, that release that's going on in our heads during such a important transitional day, life transition day, and relying on this support system that we have to help us through it. That's I thought was a great example of good planning for this transition and utilizing a good support system. The community staff to coordinate the activities around the move-in. And these, we're going to talk about this throughout the program here today. But what I'll just say in the broad sense is, just as I said, don't second guess yourself and put your trust in yourself in the work that you have done. I'm also going to say, put your trust in the community staff, from the administrator to the direct caregivers in the memory care area, and all of those in between as well too. Put your trust in them. This is what they do. This is their business. It's also their careers, and for many of them, it's their passion. And I think that it's an important step for families to take, to put your trust in the community staff. And again, I'm just acknowledging straight up that that is hard to do. But I think it's an important step. And the sooner you can make that commitment to do that, I think the easier some of this transition will be. So put your trust in them. They'll have some good suggestions for how to manage the particular move, time of the move, day of the move. Maybe you bring your person with dementia and you go and look at their new room and look, oh, there's your, the pictures of the grandkids, and here's your favorite blanket, and your pajamas are here, all, your special things are here. And then maybe you head down then to the dining room for lunch with the other people who live in memory care. And then maybe there is an activity immediately after that. So work with the community staff to coordinate all of those different activities around the move-in. And additionally, plan your departure. And again, working with the community staff. So ideally, it would be good to leave when the person with dementia is engaged with staff and participating in some kind of activity. And, I'll just say, and I think Eugenia will second this, you don't need to say that you're leaving. You can just say you need to step out to go speak with the nurse or the administrator or whoever it is, and then just do a quiet departure. And quiet departures, even though that might feel really hard to do, they can sometimes be the kindest thing to do for the person with dementia, and truly, in the end, the kindest thing you can do for yourself as well too. To then be able to get yourself out and then do some of that pre-planning for the time after your departure. So to have those positives waiting for you, whatever it is. Do you need your best friend waiting for you in the parking lot with arms open for a big hug and to pat you on the back while you have a cry? If that's what's going to work for you, then plan for that. Think about what it is that's going to help you get through this tough day, and plan for that. So, and then as far as just general observations here, visiting in the days and weeks after the move, I would say again, talk to the community about what their recommendations are and why they make them, because they do make them, and they make them for a reason. And again, put some trust in that. These folks have been doing this for a while. The other thing that is important for everybody to consider at this point is to give things time. Focus on what is most important first, and keep in mind what's most important to the person with dementia, not necessarily to you. So how do we keep it as a smooth transition with ongoing integration? And I would say, first and foremost, become familiar with the activity calendar. The activity calendar and the people who work in the activities departments are going to be and can be some of your newest, bestest friends. And the more engaged your person with dementia can be with the activities that are going on, the better for them. And again, I think Eugenia will agree with me on that, as would most, if not all, community staff members. We don't want to have a person living with dementia sitting by themselves, or, in their room with the TV on, or with the TV off and just sitting there. We don't want them sleeping in their bed all day. We want them engaged and involved. Why? Because number one, it's a quality of life issue. And number two, we have to remember these folks have dementia, which means they don't have the ability to initiate themselves, to get engaged and get involved. So the community staff needs to do that for them. And you can have a role in that as well too, when you are there visiting. So get familiar with that activity calendar and the staff. But the other thing is, get to know all community staff members. And some of the ways you can do that is by, when you go to have a visit with the person with dementia, join them at an activity, and or go for a walk around the community. Ask them to come with you, and we're going to go introduce ourselves to some of these other people here. And you can go around introducing yourselves to the community staff, to other residents and their family caregivers, and I most certainly would encourage that too. And just be very proactive about that. Don't necessarily sit back and wait for people to come to you. Get out there and get yourselves known, and start to get to know the other people that are there. This is really going to help to create and nurture this new community that, really you have all joined. You're a person living with dementia as well as yourself. And then the last thing here is, give everybody an extra amount of grace and generosity during this time. And that includes yourself. It also, though, includes the person with dementia, and it includes the community staff. This is like, I don't know, it's like dating in a sense, is that we're just starting to get to know each other. And sometimes it can feel a little awkward, and maybe we kind of blunder things a little bit, and sometimes we say the wrong thing. So give everyone an extra amount of grace and generosity. And that's going to go a long ways towards firming up these connections that we're making with these other people in the community, both staff members, community members, and residents and their families as well too. So we all need some extra wiggle room during this time. So once again, keep in mind what's most important to you, what is most important to the person with dementia, and what is most important to the community. You do have to work together to prioritize those items. And, ultimately, the high priority items are the safety and the care of the person with dementia. And I would say the other high priority item here is building trust. So give yourself time and understand that, things are going to fluctuate a little bit day to day, and that's just part of normal living. So don't be shooting for perfection, folks. We're looking to build relationships, build trust, and make this a really, really good experience for you, for the person with dementia and for the community as well too. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eugenia, who's going to talk to us a little bit more about working with community staff.
Thanks, Jean. It is very important when you're moving into a new community to establish those relationships with the community staff. As Jean mentioned, you have just expanded your care team for the person that you are looking after to make sure that you have those skilled professionals on board. So if we want to go to the next slide, Jean. Thank you. Things that will help with building the relationship. First and foremost, prior to the move-in, Jean mentioned the assessment that happens for a resident prior to moving into the community to determine what kinds of care needs need to be met. And those care plan meetings, so the assessment happens with the facility staff meeting the potential resident and the family, getting an idea of the full care needs for that person. And then the staff will go back to the community generally and put together the care plan. And prior to the move-in, or maybe on the move-in day, although it's best to keep any paperwork business scheduled not for the actual physical move-in day, but there's going to be a care plan meeting with facility staff and the responsible party, the family care partners. And so that's when you're really going to get an opportunity to sit down and see what the community has planned out. Those care plans are typically very detailed. They will state in there, what time somebody prefers to get up in the morning. Do they prefer to have bathing in the morning or the evening? All of those things. So this is really your time to be as detailed as possible with that information. It's jumping ahead a little to communication, but from my perspective, as when I was an executive director, there can never be enough information given or enough communication. The more you tell us, the more the community can personalize the care. Now, that being said, there's no way any community can guarantee that somebody will be gotten up every day at 7 o'clock. It just can't happen when you're dealing and caring for multiple people, but they will try to get as specific as possible. And those preferences are always really important. So the care plan meetings, as I said, are at move-in, and then they're generally every 6 months. But you're going to want to look at your agreement with that community, what the community policy is, but they're generally every 6 months, or if there's a change of condition. Say somebody has an illness or a fall or a medical procedure, it may change their care needs, and that would mean that the staff has to update the care plan to make sure that the person is getting everything they need. Also, if you feel that there should be something added to or taken away from the care plan, feel free to mention that to the staff as you're working with them. As I said, the communication, there can never be enough. One of the things when you're working with the staff, it's important to let them know how you prefer to be communicated with. Do you prefer email? Do you want to be called? Do you want to have text messages? And how much do you want to be communicated with? And I know that might sound silly that we all want to know about everything that's going on, but as someone who used to work in a community, it really runs the gamut, and the staff is trying to balance what everyone wants. I've worked with families before that wanted to be called for every single thing. And I've worked with families that, really only wanted very high level information given to them. So make sure you're letting the community staff know what kind of communication you want, how frequent and in what form, the best way to get in touch with you. And by the same token, ask the staff that you're dealing with. Maybe the direct care supervisor prefers to get a voicemail or email, whatever it might be, but that will help with your communications with the staff as well. Consulting with staff on medical decisions. Of course, you know the person that you're moving into the community, you know them very well. But once they get to the community or living there, their patterns and habits might change a little. So before you call a physician to say you're concerned about something, maybe just check in with the staff and get an update. How is my person sleeping? Are they sleeping through the night or getting up? Things that might have been an issue at home may have resolved once they moved into a community, or new things might pop up that weren't going on at home. So before you're going out to medical appointments or things like that, check in with the staff. Also, a very important one here to talk about, especially in the early days of someone being in a community, is the decision on when and how often to take the person out for outings, whether it be out to lunch, to the beauty shop, whatever. Check with the staff and see how they're doing. It might be that the person enjoys the outing, but it sets them up to have a really not so pleasant afternoon when they get back because there's more confusion. So talk with the staff, see how they're doing after outings, after you get back to the community. You might get to the resolution that instead of going out to a favorite restaurant, maybe you bring in takeout and enjoy it on the patio at the community or at a private table that the staff could set up for you. So really talk with the team. It's all about what's best for the resident to have the best experience. And as Jean mentioned, acknowledge the difficult emotions. It's really hard to make this decision to move someone into a community. I personally have had to do it twice for family members. And even though this is all I've ever done, it's very difficult. And it's okay to lean on the staff. They're gonna understand and know that and recognize it. And the staff knows that emotions might be a little high during the move-in process, and that's okay. All right. So along with communicating and sharing all your information, it's really important to know who to talk to. If you have a question about your bill, it's not going to get you anywhere to stop one of the caregivers in the hallway and ask them about it. So you really want to make sure you're communicating with the right people. And that's something that most communities are going to have available to you, maybe a one sheet or information in the move-in packet that tells you this is Sally and she is in the marketing department. You talk to her if you're interested in a different room. This is Patty and she's in the activities department. You talk to her if you want to know about the musical entertainment coming in. This is so-and-so and she oversees the staff that does the laundry. So just knowing who to talk to, it's going to be much more efficient for you to get the answers you need to make sure you're talking to the right person. Most communities have a process for putting in a maintenance request, a light bulb's out, a drawer sticking, that kind of thing. So really find out what those policies are, and that's going to be the easiest way to make sure you're getting things done as efficiently as possible and with the least amount of frustration. But again, feel free to stop anyone in the community. If you're not sure who to talk to, tell them what you need and they can point you in the right direction. Again, how to communicate. What is the best way for each person doing that? Verbally, a note, email. If it's something that is a high priority and you're very concerned and you want to make sure you have a resolution for by the time you leave the conversation, I would say schedule a meeting and make sure that the right people can be all together in the room, the issue can be discussed, and you can come up with a plan for resolution. That's not as easily done in the moment. It's not easy to pull everyone together at a moment's notice in a community where they could be caring for 40, 60, 80 different people. So if it's of high importance, make sure to schedule a meeting to do that. Again, the communication, how often, It's great when you're there visiting to just peek your head in and say hello to, as an executive director, I used to like it when people would peek their head in and say hello to me. It gives a chance to build a relationship. When you're there visiting most, you're going to talk probably with the direct care team that is caring for the resident, because you're going to see them the most. Staff at the community typically will not be sending out a daily, weekly, monthly email update, but you certainly can initiate a communication. You can send a regular email whenever you like to just, how are things going? How was the night? And that would be fine and will be answered, as quickly as the staff can get to it. But if it's urgent, I would always suggest a phone call. And it's not uncommon, especially right after the move-in, for people to call pretty frequently, even every day or a couple times a day, to say, how's it going? How is, Joe settling in? And that kind of thing, especially if you choose not to visit during those first couple weeks. Again, strive for, organized, polite. The staff will and should all be very respectful and polite to you. And when you're coming in with your concerns, I would say really prioritize them. Look at what are the biggest issues. Safety and medical well-being is always the first concern. If you get to the point where it's just a lost sweater, maybe that's a success, right? You're not talking about the bigger issues. So prioritize your concerns when you're coming in and work with the staff in that way. And give yourself some time to really listen to what the staff is saying. It is hard for all of us, because when you're moving someone into a community, that is your person, you know them so well. But we have to remember that they may behave differently when we're not around. And so even though we're hearing sometimes things that might not be what we've witnessed in the person or what we've seen before, it doesn't mean it's not happening. It could be a change in their condition or a progression of the disease. Okay. So working with the community, there are a few things that the community has to do to fulfill their licensing requirements and also for the best of the resident. So there will always, the facility cannot make medical decisions on behalf of the resident and the family. They can seek out medical care, but the person who is the responsible party for the resident is the one who can make the decisions. Now, they are given the ability in emergency situations to seek emergency treatment, and not only given that responsibility, but it's a requirement that they seek that emergency medical treatment. But the family and the responsible party, caregiver, whoever it might be, has the final authority with choosing providers. Just because you're moving into a community does not mean the resident has to change physicians. A facility might have some physicians they could recommend if you need one, and providers that they prefer, but residents are all encouraged to have their own physician. I mean, if you have someone you've been seeing for 10 years and have a good relationship with that physician, there's no reason to have to change. It's really important to keep those consistent relationships. But should you need some recommendations, the facility can, of course, encourage you or give you those recommendations. Medications will be administered, especially in a memory care facility, will be administered by the facility staff. And per licensing, medications includes everything, all the way down to cough drops. So cough medicine, aspirin, vitamins, all of those sorts of things, anything that would be given to the resident or taken by a resident, whether it be over the counter or prescription, needs to be administered by the facility. That's a requirement and for safety. So any changes to medications would need to, if you take the resident out to the doctor and the doctor gives you a prescription, you would bring the prescription, the written prescription or whatever, the paperwork back to the facility. You would not go get the prescription filled at your local pharmacy and bring in the medications. Facilities usually have a contracted pharmacy where they get their medications in a specific packaging system. And so you want to make sure all the medications run through the facility nursing department. The facility can also help to manage and recommend mobile therapies. Things included in those mobile therapies, outpatient physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy. Some facilities even have access to mobile dentists. It's not uncommon for facilities to have mobile physicians who come out. Some of those things are going to be dependent on your own personal insurance, but they can certainly make recommendations for people that can provide those services that they work well with. So if you're concerned or you think someone, the resident could use some extra therapy, talk to the facility and they can help you with that as well. For medical appointments, I highly recommend that someone should attend all medical appointments with a resident from a memory care community that's going out to doctor's appointments. It can be very difficult, even if the facility has the staffing to be able to have have a staff person go with the resident to doctor's appointments. It's hard to get that information back to the community. So the best way to make sure that it's seamless is to have a family member, friend, care partner go along to the doctor's appointments. That's the best way that information will both get to the physician, but also get back from the physician to the community. And very often community staff will send over notes to physicians prior to appointments. But just having that person there to hear what's going on during the appointment really makes all the difference in continuity of care. For emergencies and hospitalizations, it inevitably may come to a point where the community has to call 911 for an emergency. And the community cannot call the family first and have the family take the resident over to the doctor. The facility is required to call 911 and seek emergency medical treatment as necessary. If there's a fall, anytime there's a concern that someone hit their head, if someone is unresponsive, those would be just a few of the times when the facility staff would call 911 and have the resident transported out to the hospital. 911 can make the determination that, gee, this resident fell, but they seem to be fine, and not take them. The facility staff is required to call 911, and then 911 as the medical professional can determine if they need to go out to the hospital or not. When somebody is then, if they are hospitalized, the information getting back to the facility from the hospital can sometimes be spotty. The hospital, as we all know, they're very busy. They can't be calling several different people. So they usually default to calling the responsible party, which is going to be not facility staff. It's going to be the personal responsible party, spouse, care partner, whatever it might be. So please communicate with the facility even when the resident is out at the hospital, calling in, every couple days to say, gee, my friend is still at the hospital. This is what's going on. These are the medical tests they're running. They're thinking maybe they'll be able to be discharged on Friday. So the facility can start to prepare and get all of that information in place. Whenever there's a hospitalization, it's very common for medications to change. The care the person needs may change. So just to keep the facility informed. Hospice care is available for all residents in a residential care setting, as well as at home. Hospice is really a wonderful service to provide end-of-life comfort care. And again, that would be something that a physician would have to be in the loop and prescribe and write an order saying they think it's appropriate for a hospice evaluation. And then you can work with hospice, and it's additional care and support for the family and the resident during end of life. Okay. So when you're working with the community about frequency of visits, a facility is never going to tell you absolutely don't come visit or how often. So use your best judgment, but the facility can help guide you. If they see that visits are distressing for the resident, they might let you know that and work with you a little bit, but most often it's probably going to come down to the time of day of visits. Some visits can be more disruptive than others. I can just speak, to my experience in the past. I had a resident whose daughter was a night owl and would want to come and visit at, 9 o'clock at night and stay for a couple hours. Well, that really wasn't the best for the resident. And it's unusual, but, look at the time of day. Of course, we have to do what's convenient for us as visitors, but is it the best time of day to visit for the resident? So just keep that in mind and in consideration. Respecting the culture of the community is really about remembering that this is a home to several people, and so if you go into the community in the evening after dinner, you might see people walking around in their bathrobe and slippers, and that's okay because it's their home. In a memory care community, the focus really is for people to treat the apartment just as if it's their bedroom. So you don't want people staying in there all the time. As Jean said, you don't want to have people just in their room watching TV all day. So I know at home, we might after dinner change into our bathrobe and then come back out and sit on the couch and talk with the other people living in our house. The same thing could very often happen in a memory care community. So don't be put off if you see that. Or in communities that have little snack kitchens, you might see residents going over and opening the refrigerator and getting a yogurt or a drink or whatever it might be. It's their home. That's the culture of that memory care neighborhood and the community that you're now a part of. So one of the things that can happen when somebody lives in a community is that it could get to a point where the community can no longer meet that resident's needs. And these are things that hopefully there have been conversations about prior to move-in, to say what will happen that would cause my person to have to leave this community. There are some very strict things with licensing that cannot be accommodated in an assisted living community. If somebody has a pressure sore that's beyond stage 3 or 4, if somebody has a gastronomy tube or a nasogastric tube, a feeding tube, if somebody has like a staph infection, tracheotomy, if somebody's bedridden, which means they cannot get out of bed at all on their own, these are all reasons that they would not be able to stay at an assisted living community, because per licensing, assisted living is not considered a medical environment, a medical setting. So these are very extreme situations, but they can sometimes come up. So just know it's not that the facility doesn't want the person to stay there, but they cannot keep them and be within the constraints of their license. Another thing that could happen is if a resident is being aggressive towards others, if there's harmful behavior, if a resident is being physically aggressive towards others in that neighborhood. The facility staff will definitely work with you to see first, can there be anything done to modify the behavior? But if that's not possible, the person may be asked to leave, although it is quite rare. In my many years of working in assisted living, I can say maybe that's happened twice in my experience, that there's been somebody who absolutely could not stay. And then financial issues. We all know assisted living memory care is not inexpensive. And unless people have private long-term care insurance or a waiver in place, that it's all private pay. So please don't be shy about speaking with the facility staff if you are coming into a time that you're concerned about finances. I know it can be a very difficult conversation to have, but there might be some solutions that facility staff could offer. For example, maybe when the resident moved into the community, it was very important for them to have a large unit with, no roommates, to have a large private accommodation. Well, maybe as time goes on, the idea of sharing a room with another resident is more acceptable, and that can really save a lot financially. And also, in my experience, it's very beneficial for people to have a roommate. And so just don't be shy about talking with the staff and see what options, talking with administration and see what options they may have to offer, because it could make the difference of, a significant amount of money that could help extend the stay at the community. Okay, next slide, Jean. Thank you. Disaster and emergency planning. So the staff, the facility is required to have an emergency plan on site and available. You can ask to look at it at any time, what would need to be done in case of an emergency, in case something happens that's a community-wide emergency. They have to have that plan in place. And so one of the most important things is for you as the responsible party or family member to make sure you're updating the community with your contact information. Sometimes we don't think about it, but if you change your phone number, the facility needs to know right away. If you change an address, the facility needs to know. Also, if you're going to be out of town, if you're going to be away for 2 weeks, is there someone else that you would like us to contact in case of a real emergency? I had the experience of, due to the wildfires, we had to evacuate our community. And evacuating 100 residents was not something I ever wanted to do, nor would I like to do it again. But having all that emergency information was so important for us to be able to get a hold of the responsible parties and then to keep people updated about what was going on. That said, I did end up calling one son in Italy to let him know about the evacuation because he had not let us know he was out of town. So the information that you get sometimes is only as good as the information we have. Communities are happy to let you know what's going on, but we need to have good contact information. Signing in and out is also very important. When you are taking a resident out of the community for lunch, a doctor's appointment, whatever it might be, please be sure to follow the community guidelines for signing that resident out of the community. I know it's very easy to see a caregiver in passing and say, oh, I'm taking mom to the doctor now, we'll be back at 2 o'clock. And that staff person might have the best intentions to log that information, but on their way to log the information, they get called into another emergency or something with another resident and it doesn't get documented. When that happens, that a resident is discovered not to be at the community and it's not documented that that person is out, that sends up all alarm bells and whistles, and everything stops, and the staff then goes looking for that resident to make sure they are safe. So I cannot stress enough the importance of signing the resident out. And if you ever think it's not important, just imagine if you were to call and we didn't know where that resident was. So it's very, very important. And tips and gifts for staff. Tips, gifts for staff are not necessary and generally are not accepted. The staff is there to do a job. And although it would be lovely to be able to give a gift to someone who goes above and beyond, it's really not appropriate. And also it's easier to have it just as a general rule than make exceptions. It's easier for the staff to then say, no, I can't do that. As you can imagine, if someone with memory issues gave someone a gift and then they forgot that they gave that gift, it could cause a lot of upset and just not be pleasant for anyone. That being said, thank you note, kind words, a dozen donuts goes a long way. So something that you can bring in and share with the whole team, those types of things are generally accepted. You know, a box of candy that can be put in a break room that everyone can share. That's a nice gesture, but completely unnecessary as well. Okay. And then what I always like to say is, if you're concerned about something, you have a question, you have a request, don't be afraid to ask, but just know that the answer could be no. The facility staff really does want to work with each individual to make sure they're comfortable and safe, but the number one priority is going to be safety. And it's always a balance between trying to do something for one resident, as well as making sure everything can go well for the other 40, 50 people who live there. So, but don't be afraid to ask. Sometimes, you know, it's a great idea that just hasn't come up yet. Then when you're having a concern, an issue, there's always going to be something. No place is perfect. No relationship is perfect. There's going to be something that comes up. Please first go to the staff and the administration. They're going to be the ones who can make an immediate change. I will say, as an executive director, there were times that a family would come and they'd be so upset and so frustrated. And I would ask them, well, how long has this been going on? And they'd say, oh, 2 weeks, 2 months. Well, don't wait. If it's something that's upsetting and of a concern to you, bring it to the facility staff right away, just to get it fixed. You shouldn't be worrying about it or let something go on. And I can tell you that it's so frustrating to hear that something's been going on for a long time and the staff hasn't been able to do anything about it because they didn't know about it. Also, at most facilities, you will have a grievance procedure that you should be notified that if you're not getting satisfactory response from the staff within the building, in larger companies, there are people outside of the community that you should be able to access and take your concerns to, that then can circle back to the community and affect change. In communities, there's also going to be a resident and family council. Those are great places to get involved, get to know other people, as well as it's a place to hear, are you the only one having a certain issue? Maybe there are other people, or this is how I solved it. And then the long-term care ombudsman, they're available to everyone. It is a volunteer program. You can reach out to them. And ultimately, assisted living and memory care is licensed by the Department of Social Services, community care licensing. So you can always call them or go to their website and make a complaint. If you make a complaint to licensing, they are required to follow up on it. So know that when you call it in, it will be addressed. Someone will go out to the community and investigate your complaint.
Gina, Amy, I see there's just all sorts of action happening in Q&A. What do you got?
Yes, I'm trying to answer as many as I can in writing, but there are a couple I want to ask you to discuss together here. First is it beneficial for somebody after their loved one has moved into a memory care facility to come and sleep over for a few days when they first move into the community? Is that allowed? And what are your thoughts on that?
It's
on that, yeah.
It's allowed. I mean, I would definitely clear it with the staff so that they know someone's there. That said, I wouldn't recommend it. The reason you've made this step and you've made this decision to move somebody into a community is for them to get settled and get the care they need. Having someone spend the night, it's going to only slow down the process of assimilating to the new environment. So I would not recommend it.
Would agree with that.
Thank you. There's a series of questions and chats that came in about communities having a group of residents that are just older or lower functioning than the person that I am either considering placing, or if my loved one already lives in that community, they're like the youngest or the highest functioning person there. Jean, I know you're going to be talking about making the most of visits later in the program, but any just sort of general thoughts on that, how to help somebody who's higher functioning sort of integrate into a community where people are lower functioning than they are?
I'll just jump in quick and then turn it over to Eugenia. My suggestion would be, again, communicate about this with the community staff, and in particular, maybe with the activities director, to see, can the person with dementia who's higher functioning be given some sort of role as kind of an assistant, a helper, a volunteer with getting things done, getting things set up, maybe helping some of the other residents, but, you know, make it kind of official so that it's not, so it has some meaning to the person with dementia. What do you think, Eugenia?
I agree with that very much, Jean. And also to talk to the activity staff to say, maybe help make introductions if there are other residents that are more active and independent that maybe just aren't as visible right at the moment. The other thing about that, sadly, to remember is that very often those residents that you're seeing that are older and more progressed in the disease were probably at one point the young active ones. So it is a progression that happens in the community.
Thank you. You
All
may
right.
continue.
Okay, let's keep going here. We've got a few more things to talk about. So what I will be talking about now is adjusting to new relationships. So what do we mean by that? Well, before we get into it, let's just say, take a deep breath, everybody. And I hope you've been doing this all along your journey with dementia and continuing to do so. So take a deep breath. Imagine yourself, I mean, for me, yeah, this would be good for me to be sitting on the beach, listening to the waves, watching them. Take a deep breath. And just acknowledge, you know, things have changed here for you, for the person living with dementia. And remember that a good portion of this change is for the positive. I did see some chat earlier in the chat section here of today's webinar, where a participant was talking about having made the decision to place her husband in memory care and acknowledging the difficulty of that, but also acknowledging that, you know, she's now able to get a good night's sleep and take care of her own health, and thinking about the positives of that, not only for you just as a care partner and a person, but it does in fact allow you to be a kinder and more efficient care partner, spouse, daughter, son, whatever it is, to the person living with dementia. So again, think about how many of these changes that have occurred are positive changes, and continue taking those deep breaths. So you're adjusting to new relationships, and it's new relationships with your person with dementia as well too. So now they're living in a different environment from you, and that involves some shifts in the relationship. And so, of course, you're also adjusting to new relationships with community staff as well too, and again, to other residents and their families. So in thinking about this, when we're talking about greetings, be thinking about each of these different groups of people and or individuals that you will be greeting. So manage your expectations with regards to that. And with your person with dementia, there may come a time, there likely will come a time, if it hasn't occurred already, where the person may not recognize you or know your name, or they may not react the way that you hope. A quick example of that, and this was referred to in last week's webinar. Sometimes what happens, and this is the truth, is that communities do such a great job together with what is being done and the support of the family and the care partner, that the resident, the person who's just moved in, really integrates and assimilates well. And I've seen this happen where they are busy in an activity and doing something and engaged with other residents, and a family member comes in to visit, and the person with dementia has been kind of dismissive, or like, I don't have time for you right now. And it's been kind of one of those moments of, wait, that's kind of hurtful. That's the reaction I'm getting. And yes, there's some hurtful aspects to that, but it's actually a really positive thing, because it is illustrating the degree to which the person with dementia has integrated into the community and is enjoying quality of life, is enjoying themselves with what they're doing. So be planning and prepared about that. There's going to be changes in communication that is going to mean letting go of some things and letting go of some expectations as well too. It's going to mean validating what's going on, and obviously redirecting as well too. And I want to just say that sometimes we don't always need to be speaking either with communication, that sometimes we can just be silent and just be communicating with our nonverbals, smiling at each other, holding hands. So think about that and the adjustments that will be coming for you if they haven't already started. With regards to departures, this is something, again, to try and be thinking about and be planning for, to try and check your emotions and look at the timing of things. All the better if the person with dementia is engaged in some activity, or it's a meal time, or something else is going on, so that the departure is kind of low key for both of you. And absolutely get help from community staff with redirection for that too. Understand that there may be negative reactions. And again, perhaps that lack of recognition with the person you care for, the person living with dementia. And that relationships with others are going to change. Again, I saw in chat a little earlier, a participant who made the decision to place the person with dementia in memory care, and there was some backlash from family members and friends about that decision. So that obviously is impacting and changing relationships. Unfortunately, in a negative way in this case, and sometimes this does happen. Another thing that we want to really encourage everybody to do is continue with your ongoing education and support. Having a person, you know, making the decision to have them move into memory care does not mean that's it. You know, we're good now. We really want you to continue on with education and support. It's really important. And so how do we plan successful visits? Well, again, you've heard me say it, and I will keep repeating it. I do have a bit of a bias, having worked in activities all those years. But honestly, folks, get to know the activity staff and get really familiar with the calendar. And I will say, do, you know, throw your expectations out the window, in the sense of, you know, don't have these preconceived ideas of what the person with dementia might like to do or not like to do. Put your trust in the hands of the activity staff and be open to anything. It's been a long time since I worked in memory care. So flashback, you know, 25 years, let's say. And, you know, one of the things we did at that time was we did manicures, and, you know, not where we were cutting or doing anything to cuticles, but cleaning the hands, cleaning the nails. We did cut the nails and file them. If somebody wanted nail polish on, we would do that. Well, I ended up in my little manicure session that I did with my people on the unit that I worked on, I ended up having some of the men coming down to get their nails done. And, you know, some of these guys were burly, old school farmers, and, you know, these were men's men. And the idea of them sitting down to get a manicure, I'm sure, was shocking to some of their family members. But they enjoyed it. They enjoyed the attention and you know, the physical contact, and it was just a good thing. So, you know, I think we'll see more of that today. We do see more of it today, but back at that time, you would not have ever seen a gentleman going to get a manicure, not in the area I was in at the time. So again, just put your preconceived notions away. And conversely, let me just say, you know, maybe your person with dementia has been an artist all their life and has always loved to paint. Don't be thinking that that's necessarily something that they are really going to want to engage in. They may not want to do that. So again, just be open. When you are visiting, you can think about bringing in items to share or to do together, such as photo albums. You can participate in community activities together. Talk with the community about maybe occasionally having a meal with them. Have a lunch with them. And whatever it is you are going to do for an activity with the person with dementia, do remember to do with and not for. I will share with you this one particular program I was doing. It was an art program. And this gentleman had this large white sheet of watercolor paper. It was watercolors. And he painted a little something or other in the bottom right corner of his white sheet. And I said, gee, you know, that looks really good. You know, what about, are you going to do anything over here with this white space here? And he turned and looked at me like this. He said, it's my painting, it's not yours. And it was a good reminder for me to, we don't need to get in there and micromanage. So, you know, just be in the moment and do with them and not for them. What else do we need to do? Well, we need to pay attention to our body language. We need to be trying to have some kind of positively themed agenda in mind, and to that end, have some conversation starters. And some examples might be, come on, Mom, take me for a tour around this lovely new place you have here. Or where can we get a cup of coffee? Do you know? Let's wander around and let's see where we can go. Updates, keep them, kind of happily generic about kids, grandkids, pets, etc. But be cautious about, anything like it was, specific. It was Robbie's birthday the other day and we had a party, because that might be a trigger to say, well, why wasn't I at the party? So think about the things that you're going to say in terms of updates as well too. The other thing there I'm just thinking is with pets, if the person had a pet and they weren't able to bring the pet with them to move into the home, maybe avoid some of those updates. So really that's going into the next one of avoiding trigger topics. And some other trigger topics might be talking about home. If you're getting peppered with some questions about, when are we going home? Or are you taking me home today? Or I want to go home. Go back to those pre-planned reasons for why we're not going home. The house is being tented. Yes, it's still being tented, or they're repairing the damage that was done by the termites is being repaired right now. So go back to whatever the therapeutic fib was, give the answer, validate. I know you're anxious, to go home again. And right now the house is being tented again. The termite damage was extensive. And then redirect. So, all right, well, listen, it looks like at 1 o'clock they're doing a good movie, a good John Wayne Western in the activity room. Let's go check it out and get some popcorn while we're there. So redirect. Try your best not to argue, reason, correct, and remind. And we do these things all the time throughout our lives. It's how we communicate. It's how we get people over to our side, to our opinion, how we win conflicts and arguments, and how we, kind of assert ourselves. Don't you remember? I told you that. So try to lose some of those communication strategies that are not good strategies when you're communicating with a person with dementia, and connect through all the senses: touch, sight, smell, taste, sound. And you can access all these things in the communities. I'll tell you, they'll have everything from fresh baked cookies and to smell and to taste. They may have some aromatherapy programs going on. They may have pets in the home that you can search out and hug and cuddle and maybe brush. There'll be all sorts of opportunities to connect through the senses. So adapting to future changes. So this means all sorts of different things, and certainly remembering that the person with dementia will continue to change with disease progression. So stay informed about what to expect with this disease progression, and to be communicating regularly with the community staff, with the doctor or doctors, and keeping informed as to what is being observed as far as change goes with the person with dementia. And, it is important to understand what later stage dementia means, what it entails, what it looks like, and to be, if you haven't already, absolutely to be talking about end of life, and hopefully you've got those plans in place. So communicate regularly with the community staff about changes you may be seeing. Remember that we're all looking at the person with dementia with a different set of eyes and a different perspective. So you want to do some check-ins on a regular basis to see, are they observing what you are observing, or do they see something different? Maybe Bringing in some outside one-to-one assistance might be an option when additional care is needed. And again, that's something to talk about with the community. And by bringing in outside one-to-one assistance, I mean hiring a caregiver as a family, hiring a caregiver to come in to the community to provide some extra one-to-one assistance and support to your person. There's care management and case management that can be brought into the picture as well too. That can also be a real help, and a particular help to families that maybe live out of state and or adult children that are working and very, involved and maybe starting to travel again for their work. There's absolutely some of these supports can be very helpful. Eugenia mentioned hospice care. There's also palliative care. These are options that should be available within the community that they can at least help you as a family to access, and together with the assistance of the person's doctors to get these services in place. And then talk with the community also about what happens when the person with dementia dies within the community. What can you as a family and as a care partner expect? How does that, what happens? What are the steps that occur? Caring for yourself is not going to change. We're such big advocates of caring for yourself at Alzheimer's San Diego, and that doesn't change at this stage either. So we want you to be doing the good things that you need to. So preparing for and acknowledging some of the different emotions that are going on. And an important part of this is resuming your life. And that's something that is important for you to do through this transition time, to begin resuming your own interests, your own engagements and socializations outside of the world of dementia. We hope that you will not be dealing with judgment from others, but you may, so be prepared for that and look to your support systems to help shore up the shields to deal with that judgment. You may need to establish visitation schedules. Absolutely, get to know the other residents and families. This is an opportunity for you to expand your world and to share your knowledge and experience too. So that can be a real important piece of this. And absolutely find your support wherever it's going to be. Now, unfortunately, folks, we have come really to the end of our program here today, and we are not going to be able to do any more Q&A, I'm so sorry to say, but I see Amy has been sending out in the Q&A and in the chat the follow-up forms for you to fill out so that our clinical care team can reach out to you to answer some of those questions. So please continue to do that with the follow-up forms. Now, there's just a brief overview of all the different things we do, everything from our clinical care coaches to our volunteer programs, Vitals, for people who are living alone in the community with Alzheimer's disease. We put volunteers in touch with them. Our Respitals Companions program. We absolutely support local research. We have social activities and outings for people with dementia and their care partners, and they're a lot of fun, let me tell you. We have our volunteer tech team. We've had Cora here with us today, and thank you so much, Cora. That's been terrific. We have all sorts of online education and training. And again, this webinar has been recorded, will be posted to the webinar library just in a few days. We have our virtual support groups as well too. Lots of different things that we can offer to you folks at no cost. And these are all important supports and resources for you. So you can visit our website and get information and resources, tip sheets, of course, again, the video and webinar library, call us at this number, talk to our clinical care coaches, and then the link that has been sent out. Some upcoming education that we have, maintaining your brain health on Saturday, March 12th, and that's just around the corner. Safety at home, Wednesday, March 16th. And then a skills clinic on balance and fall prevention. We will have a professional joining Amy for that particular webinar, and it's going to be very good as well too. So feel free to register for those programs. We'd love your feedback, and you will be receiving an online survey about this webinar today once we wrap up. And again, we'll email a copy of today's slides out to everybody. And we thank you all for being here. And Eugenia and Amy and Cora, could I get all three of you just to come on? I want to say thank you. We had to cover a lot here today, and this is all important information. So apologies for being, I guess, by my clock about 3 minutes over, but I think we got the bulk of it done here. So thank you, Amy, for your support. Eugenia, as always, for your wisdom and insight. And again, Cora, for your support as our tech team volunteer.
Thank you all. Thank you for your great questions and support to each other. That was really nice to see. And again, just a reminder, if we weren't able to answer a specific question, reach out to us anytime.
Absolutely. All right, take care, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Get out and get some sunshine. And we'll see you next time.